Welcome to our lesson today on quadratic equations. We are going to talk about line of symmetry and vertex a little bit more today. Remember to email me if you have questions. You can turn in any late work from quarter 3 and quarter 4. Make sure you have that pencil and paper ready to take notes because I actually want you to try the U-try problems. Make sure you use your school email address to access the IEP because if you don't, it won't work. There is never a reason to guess. Leave blanks or write I don't know in an answer blank. So email me or attend office hours to get your questions answered. Don't forget that it's really important that you understand the material, not just make random guesses. So I am here to help, and we can work with you on problems you don't understand. You can do it. Okay, so look at the student on the right. The reading directions is at the bottom, and the next step would be to watch the video. The next step after that would be to do the worksheet. The step after that would be to take a picture of the worksheet and attach it to the assignment. And then the last step would be to click mark as done. And so basically this picture just shows that he's going straight from reading the directions and like skipping all the stuff in between and just submitting his work. Don't be like this kid, okay? Actually go through the steps and ask for help. That way you'll do the best that you can. Quarter 4 ends on May 21st. That's literally in 11 days, y'all. So if you are passing with a C or better by then you are done. If you are not, you will need to continue working for an additional week. So let's get these things handed in. Don't forget, if you have a 60% or better, you will be eligible for remediation at the end of the semester. And most of you can hit that mark by just handing in missing work. Okay, so let's reach that 60%. I have a bonus project that I mentioned last class. If you want more information on that, please check the haiku page. That will be due by May 22nd. All expectations about this bonus project is on haiku, and it is worth 20 extra credit points, which is like the same as doing 2 homework assignments. So it's really, really, really helpful to boost your grade. My celebration for this week is that I've had a chance to get outside and enjoy the sun. It's been really awesome to just be able to relax and get that done. So I'd love to hear from you in the celebrations, announcements, and struggle section on your IP. So let's review finding the zeros. So we've learned about 2 different methods of finding zeros. So we can solve by factoring, and then we can solve by using the quadratic formula. Both options are great, and they have 3 steps that you must follow in order to use them. So for factoring, we make sure the equation is in standard form. Then we factor by finding the magic numbers and grouping. If you cannot find the magic numbers, and there are no magic numbers that actually exist, that means it's not factorable, and therefore you have to use the quadratic formula. Step 3 would be to use the zero product property to set each factor to 0, then solve. You may have 1 or 2 solutions. So that's the factoring method. The quadratic formula method, step 1 is standard form. Step 2 is to use the formula. And then step 3 is to simplify using the order of operations. We have to always remember to simplify what's underneath the radical first. Okay. For this, you'll have 1 or 2 solutions. So this is a great slide to refer to when you're practicing finding the zeros by factoring or quadratic formula because all the steps are here. So let's find the zeros of the quadratic equation y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3 by factoring. So the first thing we do is make sure it's in standard form. So standard form would be x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. The next step is that we need to find the magic numbers. Okay, so the magic numbers would multiply to our a times c value. Well, if a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 3, that means a times c would be this 1 times negative 3 here. So we'll have negative 3, and then they need to add to our b value, which is negative 2. So those two numbers, if you don't know, you need to go ahead and make your factor table and figure out all the ways that you can get negative 3 by multiplying two numbers, and then you'll check to see which of those add to negative 2. So we will find that our numbers will be negative 3 and 1. So we can plug our magic numbers back into our equation. So we'll have x squared minus 3x plus 1x minus 3 equals 0. And we can factor these two things by grouping. So we'll group the first two and our last two. We can take out an x from the first pair. And we can only take out a 1 from the second pair, and that's okay. And that's equal to 0. So let's write what's left in the middle. So we'll have an x minus 3 here, and we also end with an x minus 3 over here. So our two factors are going to be x plus 3, x minus 3. There we go. And when we cross that out, we'll write what's left, which is x plus 1, and that's equal to 0. The last step to finding the zeros is that we need to find our zeros by setting each of our factors equal to 0. So our first factor is x minus 3, and our second factor is x plus 1. So we're going to have x minus 3 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. So when we solve our first one for x, we'll get x equals 3 as our first 0. And our second 0, we will get x equals negative 1. Now, if we want to write our zeros as points, we can do that. So our final answers would be 3, 0, and I'll write our zeros over here just because I'm running out of room. So our zeros are 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. Okay. Let's solve this same quadratic using the quadratic formula, and I want to find the zeros, okay? So first step here is that we need to write our quadratic in standard form. So we'll have x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. We need to identify a, b, and c so that we can plug it into our quadratic formula. So a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 3. Now that we know those things, we can plug it into our quadratic formula. Quadratic formula says x equals, I'm going to go ahead and outline it first, and then I'll fill in my numbers at the end. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So b is negative 2. Negative 2 goes here as well. 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3, all over 2a, so 2 times 1. Next, we need to simplify. It's important that we simplify everything under our radical first. So let's see, we'll have this equals, so negative times a negative 2 is a positive 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 times negative 3, so we'll have a plus 12 all over 2. And we'll loop this around up here. So we'll have this is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 all over 2. And we can simplify the square root of 16 to 4 all over 2. And remember that the plus or minus sign tells us that we have to separate this into two separate equations. So we'll have 2 plus 4 divided by 2. And we'll have 2 minus 4 divided by 2. So here we'll get 6 over 2, which equals 3. And we'll get negative 2 over 2, which equals negative 1. So our zeros are going to be the same as the zeros we found by factoring earlier, and we can write them as points. So it'll be 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. So when we found the zeros of x squared minus 2x minus 3, we calculated them using factoring and the quadratic formula, and we found that they were 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. So once we find the zeros, the next step would be to graph them, okay? And we haven't done this yet, so this is something new. So once you have zeros, you can actually graph them on your x-axis. So 3, 0 is right here on the graph. And negative 1, 0 is here on the graph, okay? From there, we have to decide what is the direction of our parabola going to be through these points. We have two options, either up like a cup or down like a frown. In order to identify the direction, we need to know what our a value sign is. So a is a positive 1. Okay, and I got a from looking at the coefficient of my x squared term, and it's a positive 1. So since it's positive, it's going to be up like a cup. And that's all we do. Make sure it goes through the point. There we go. Okay. So what is the next step for quadratic equations? Now that we can put a quadratic equation into standard form, find the zeros using factoring and the quadratic formula, and identify the parts of a parabola, let's focus on how we calculate the line of symmetry and the vertex using the equation. So the line of symmetry. The line of symmetry is the same as the x value of the vertex. To find the x value of the vertex, use the equation x equals negative b over 2a. So let's find the line of symmetry of x squared minus 2x minus 3. So what we need to do is we need to use the vertex formula, which is x equals negative b over 2 times a. So we need to identify a. A is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 3. So we can plug our values into our equation. So we'll have negative 2, and let's make this red negative because that's actually a part of the formula. So negative, and then we'll have plug in our b value over 2 times our a value, which is going to be 1. So this simplifies to a positive 2 over 2, which is 1. So it tells us that our x value is equal to 1. So the line of symmetry is going to be found at x equals 1. All you have to do to find the line of symmetry is start with the formula x equals negative b over 2a. Find your values of a, b, and c and plug them in, and then you'll solve for x to get your line of symmetry. Now with the vertex. The x value in the vertex is the same as the line of symmetry. Okay, so to find the y value of the vertex, you're going to replace x in the original equation with a line of symmetry and solve for y. Remember, we are looking for an xy pair. Since our vertex is either the maximum or the minimum point on the graph, okay? It's a maximum or minimum point, so when we find the vertex, we need to find a point. So far, we know that x is equal to that value of 1 that we just calculated in the previous problem, okay? So we know that we're going to graph it somewhere where x is 1. We don't quite know where y is yet, so we can't graph it just quite. So let's find the vertex. Well, we used the formula negative b over 2a to find that x was equal to 1. Okay, and this is our axis of symmetry. Now we can take this value of x and plug it in to our formula wherever we see an x. So that's going to look like this. It's going to be y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3, and we can fill in those blanks with our value of x, which is 1. So now let's go through and simplify. So 1 squared is 1, minus 2 minus 3. This is 1 minus 2. We have to do order of operations, so simplify from left to right. Negative 1 minus 3. And this is equal to negative 4. So some of us might think, okay, our answer is y equals 4, so this is my vertex, I'm done, boom, I can move forward. No, remember, the vertex must be a point. So to make this a point, what I need to do is I need to write an x and a y value. So my vertex is going to be 1, my axis of symmetry, comma, negative 4. Okay, so here is the vertex. Now that we have a point, we can go ahead and graph. So let's bring it all together. So we found that our zeros at the very beginning using factoring in the quadratic formula was 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. We found using negative b over 2a that our line of symmetry was x equals 1. Once we plugged in our line of symmetry back into our original quadratic, we found that our vertex point was 1, negative 4. So let's go ahead and graph these and we can see. Well, we have 3, 0. We have negative 1, 0. And then our line of symmetry should be at x equals 1. Our vertex is at 1, negative 4, which is down here. And we're going to connect our graph. And it's going to be up like a cup. So the direction of our graph is up. Okay, and our line of symmetry, so if I split my graph in half perfectly, it should be at 1. Now Miss Lockhart is having a hard time drawing a straight line, so she's gonna retry and see that our graph splits right down the middle where x is equal to 1. So that matches our line of symmetry here. Okay, so we have successfully graphed a parabola. Great job. Okay, so on your own, I want you to pause the video and find the zeros of the following equation using the quadratic formula. So A is equal to 2. B is negative 4, and C is negative 2. Standard form of this equation is 2x squared minus 4x minus 2 equals 0, and we can plug it into our formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b, so I apologize, our b is supposed to be negative 4, I just wrote 4. So we'll have negative 4, and then negative 4 again, times a is 2, 4ac, negative 2 over 2. And we can simplify this. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus, well, 8 times 2 is 16, all over 4. And this is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 16, which is 32, all over 4. Let's snake this around. So we have the square root of 32. Well, that can break down into, let's make a little tree for 32 really quickly, because it's not a perfect square. We can break it down into 16 and 2, which breaks down into 4 times 4. So we have a pair here and 1 left. So we'll simplify this to 4 plus or minus 4 root 2 all over 4. Remember, this here tells us we have to split it into 2 equations. So we'll have 4 plus 4 root 2 over 4. And we'll have 4 minus 4 root 2 over 4. So for these, since we do not have perfect squares, we'll have to use our calculator to simplify. So the square root of 2 is approximately 1.4. So we'll have 4 times 1.4. So 4 times 1, or square root of 2, is approximately 5.6. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not letting me write it. 5.6. Let's get back to this. Okay, so we'll have 4 plus 5.6 divided by 4. So this 0 here is 2.4. And our second 0 will be from 4 minus 5.6. 4 minus 5.6. Which is negative 1.6 divided by 4, which is negative 0.4 for our second 0. So if we wanted to write these as points, we would have 2.40 and negative 0.40. Great practice. Now, let's find the line of symmetry in Vertex. This is a you-try problem, so go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own. Here's the formula for line of symmetry in case you forgot to write it down. Okay. So our A value is 2, our B value is negative 4, and our C value is negative 2. So here we'll have negative 4 over 2 times 2. And this gives us 4 over 4, which is 1. So we found the vertex, we found the line of symmetry, so x equals 1. To find the vertex, we plug in 1 into our original equation and then write it as a point. So y equals 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 minus 2. So this is 2 minus 4 minus 2, which is negative 2 minus 2, which is equal to 4. Negative 4. So our y value is negative 4, and our x value is 1. So our vertex is 1, -4. Lastly, I want you to try and graph this. It might be difficult because you don't have a graph, so we can actually just do this together. So our zeros were, well, let's go back and check. Our zeros were 2.4, 0 and negative 0.4, 0. So we'll have 2.4, 0 and negative 0.4, 0. Perfect. Our line of symmetry, we used negative b over 2a, and we found that x was 1. We plugged our line of symmetry value into our original equation to get our vertex point, and it was 1, -4. The code word for today is going to be the word Riley, in celebration of the Riley Dance Marathon that Riverside High School just had. Please follow them on Instagram to see all of the cool videos they came up with. Okay, so now let's go ahead and graph our zeros and our vertex, and then we can see where that direction is going to be. So our zeros, we have to approximate it, okay? It's hard to do exactly 2.4 unless we have a really good graph. So we can just approximate where we think 2.4 might be on the graph. So 2.4 is just about in the middle of 2 and 3. Just right there. We'll just approximate it. It's not perfect. And negative 0.4 is going to be between about 0 and 1. -1, so we'll just say it's there. Okay, not perfect, but we get a good idea, a rough estimate. Our vertex is 1, -4, so pretty much the same as before. And that's way off, so let me go ahead and erase it. And try again. Okay, and we can draw a line through these 3 points to connect them. And it's supposed to be a nice shaped parabola, but Miss Officer Lockhart has a hard time drawing sometimes. Okay, let's check real quick to make sure our line of symmetry is at 1. So if we cut this in half, it should be at 1, and it is right about here. Okay, so that's good. The last thing we have to fill in is the direction of the parabola, and it's going to be up like a cup. Okay, so up is that direction. All right. We are going to, in the interest of time, here are some practice problems that you can try if you would like, but you have all of the tools that you need now in order to get your IP started, okay? On your IP, you're going to have to find the zeros, then you're going to find the axis of symmetry using the equation negative b over 2a. Then, once you find your axis of symmetry, you can plug that x value into your original equation to find y, and then you'll have your vertex point. And then you can graph, and don't forget to tell me the direction. So either up like a cup or down like a frown. Great job today. And don't forget to take a look at the rubric and expectations for the project to help boost your grade.